You believe this is the only universe. There's not just one universe. There's a multiverse.
I'm sorry, you're saying there's a multiverse?
Across the Spider-Verse has some big shoes to fill after Into the Spider-Verse came out in 2018. That movie came out and had no expectations set for it. It's an animated movie, there's no Peter Parker, it's not in the MCU, which at the time was the biggest thing around. Turns out we were getting one of the best Spider-Man movies ever, as well as one of the best animated movies of all time. Now it's 2023 and we're finally getting the sequel. And let me just say there is a ton to love about Across the Spider-Verse. Most of the characters from Into the Spider-Verse are back, and we see their relationships being built up even more, such as Miles and Gwen, or even Miles and his parents. But going further than that, we have a ton of character development individually, and we see them grow through the tough realizations and situations that they're put in Across the Spider-Verse. Speaking of characters, we get a lot of different Spider-Man variants throughout the movie. Most notably Spider-Punk, who's this fun, rock star, rebel Spider-Man who makes you laugh in every scene that he's in. The score is another big standout for me while watching this. Music can either make or break a movie depending on how well it fits into the film, or if it's just even good in general. Across the Spider-Verse has so much variation in its music and the score depending on what world we're in. When we're in Brooklyn with Miles and his family, we get a lot of Puerto Rican influences to the music. If we go to Mumbattan, you can clearly hear the influences from India. If we go to the Spider Society world, we get some futuristic cyberpunk score. There's a ton of variation in the score for Across the Spider-Verse. None of it was out of place, and it all meshed incredibly well with what we were watching on screen. The animation is unique to each world we visit throughout the nearly 2.5-hour runtime. I won't go into detail because I don't want to spoil anything, but each time we change location you get excited because you don't know what to expect. What's even more impressive about the animation is, let's say we take Miles out of his world and put him into another. Well, his animation from his world stays the same, he looks the same, but the world around him could look drastically different, and yet somehow he looks out of place, but it works. Somehow they managed to make all these different art styles and other surprises look very different, and yet it meshes really well with what they're trying to do. The score, the characters, the animation are all fantastic, but what about the story? Well, the story is the main focus of Across the Spider-Verse. Since this is part one of a much bigger story, this is clearly a setup movie. An example I would use is Infinity War in the MCU.
But this does put a smile on my face.
Infinity War was used to set up the story to lead into Endgame. Across the Spider-Verse plays a similar role to that. Now there is a lot of action, but the focus is to build the story, the characters, the relationships, the world or worlds that we are all in throughout the movie. While nearly every aspect of Across the Spider-Verse is as good as it possibly could be, there are a few things that make it feel a little incomplete. Like I said before, this is part one to a much bigger story, so this is a setup movie. You can clearly see while watching Across the Spider-Verse, this will not have a resolution at the end, and that is exactly what happens. I know that when the next part gets released, it's going to make this movie even better than it already is. But for this specific movie, it leaves you wanting some closure because of how good the story is, and you actually care about what happens to the characters. Branching off of that point, another critique that I have about this specific movie that I know will get addressed in the next one is the lack of character development of the newer characters. Newcomers like Miguel O'Hara or Spider-Woman have a good amount of screen time and are clearly very important characters of the story. I would have liked to learn more about them and what drives them to do what they do, kind of like what we got from Gwen and Peter B. Parker. It's a small thing, but something I wanted to see in this movie. Across the Spider-Verse nails pretty much everything it tries to do, whether it's pushing the boundaries of animation, your move Disney, creating a multiverse story that is consistent and actually makes sense, your move Disney, or creating arguably the best Spider-Man movie ever. This is a situation where the sequel actually lives up to the expectations set by the predecessor. And I believe that once the next chapter is released, it will make Across the Spider-Verse even better than it already is. Thank you all for watching my review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Let me know down in the comment section if you like the movie and where this kind of stands in your overall ranking of all the Spider-Man movies, because I know this is going to be at the top of a lot of people's lists. And remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel for movie news, reviews, rankings, recaps, and more. Until next time, see you later.